Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wise Up, a money podcast made by and for Gens Y and Z to help you be better with money. Now, today, I'm actually going to pick up where I left off on Monday, because I thought that I left some stones unturned, and I really wanted to dig deeper into that topic. The entire concept of behavioral finance, social psychology, and even social programming to an extent, but I'll get to that later in today's session. But before we get started, if you could, guys, do me a favor. Follow the channel, subscribe to it, like the videos, like the audio, share it with friends. It would mean the world to me. It can help us get this out to as many people as possible. Please. I'm asking you nicely here. So let's now get into precisely what I want to continue off from. See, Monday, I spent the entire episode discussing the reasons, let's call it, behind some of the greatest advertising campaigns in human history, namely diamonds, but also to a lesser extent luxury handbags and sunglasses, how those functions work, but how they also feed into social proof, looking a certain way in order to establish or maintain relationships and connections, either romantic ones or business ones. And I want to continue digging into that because there's quite a bit that I can elaborate on. I could really make an entire podcast just about social psychology and behavioral finance. So let's dig into it a bit. A quote that I realized after the fact that I'd forgotten to mention during the interview on Monday was from Nicky Oppenheimer. Now, Nicky is the man who took over, essentially, from Cecil Rhodes as the head of De Beers International. And at one time, he was discussing the value of diamonds, and he said, quote, "Diamonds are intrinsically worthless except for the deep psychological need they fill." That's a rather profound statement, also a damning one coming from the man who owned, I guess, ran the largest diamond company in the world at the time, that even he understood there was nothing intrinsically valuable about the precious metal that you had to spend a month's salary on in order to then propose to the person you want to spend the rest of your life with. There was nothing truly valuable except for that psychological need that they were attempting to fill. Now, why is that? See, there was an experiment actually done by the University of Chicago during COVID where what they were trying to find out is what young children preferred. Do they prefer experiences, experiential rewards, or toys, gifts of some kind? What they found is that most children, especially those in the ages of 3 to 5, preferred toys, objects, gifts, over experiences. Now, the researchers' argument was that because they were too young and the brain wasn't fully formed yet, they wouldn't remember the experiences that they had, even if they had a blast, even if they had all the fun possible, they wouldn't really remember it. Whereas if they were given a physical, tangible object, they could attach those positive memories to it, positive sentiments to it, and they would therefore prefer that. And the researchers had found, actually, that all the way up and through the age of 12, roughly around puberty, children preferred toys to experiences. And that was their kind of profound finding. Now, this is not to say that just because children prefer it, even if we accept the conclusions of this study as valid, that is the correct or best possible outcome. See, because a couple of years earlier, the University of Toronto did their own study comparing the effects of giving children toys, objects, or experiential rewards, experiences. What they found was that parents who gave their child experiences instead of gifts like a toy saw an increased boost in their child's intelligence as well as a stronger relationship down the line. Because even if, let's say, the child didn't remember the excursion to Disneyland or whatever it was, the sentiment and the foregoed bond that they could have had spending time with you, doing things with you, even if they didn't remember it fully, you always remember connections. For instance, people who are scared of dogs because one time when they were 2 or 3, they got bit by one. You might not remember the fact that you were bit by a dog, but you'll know as an adult that you're scared of dogs. It's much the same. Even if you don't remember the outing with your parents, having it will, according to the study, and reasonably speaking common sense, you will increase your connection to them. You'll see an increase in those positive sentiments that you associate with the person for having the experience. Now, as for the boost in intelligence, I can't really comment one way or the other, but that was one of the other conclusions that was drawn. So now we've kind of got not exactly opposite, but two sides of the same story, where as children we prefer objects, even though experiences are better for us. And now I think that there's actually a very good other study that was done decades ago that truly speaks to that divide. In 1978, a group of Canadian social experimenters, let's call them social scientists, took groups of 4 and 5-year-olds and split them into two. The first group was shown commercials for a toy, whereas the second was not. After the first group had been exposed to the commercials, they gave both groups the same choice. They could either A, play with a boy who had, a toy. For the children in the first group, they knew there was the toy that was being shown in all the commercials. However, with the warning that he was not a nice boy to be friends with, he was rude or angry, he would throw things, just not a nice person to be around. Or they could play with another little boy who didn't have a toy, but was just a nice boy. Was kind, would play with you, talk to you, whatever it was. And these children reacted astonishingly. The group that had been shown the commercial opted to play with the boy who had the toy, despite the fact that they had been warned that he was a much, less positive person to be around, that it would be a negative experience for them. Whereas those that had not seen the commercial obviously chose the boy who was a much more pleasant experience. Essentially, the children that had been primed with a physical object, or at least with the notion of desiring a physical object, opted for a worse human connection over a more positive one. And I think that is profound. That at such a young age, even then, still you have that preference for objects over experiences, that even if we were told ahead of time, listen, you don't want to hang out with this kid, he's just not very pleasant. If he has a toy that we now want because we saw ads about how special the toy was, we're going to spend time with the kid. Didn't matter that he sucked to be around. And I'm going to ask you a question. Now, as adults, perhaps teens, can you think back to a time in your life, or perhaps the life of a friend, where you or they associated with someone who had some prized object, a nice car, the new phone, whatever it was, and even if that person was not pleasant to be around, did you or your friend stick to them? I would wager a significant portion of the time the answer is yes. And that goes back to social proof. If someone has something that we deem desirable, that we deem important, we will forego the meaningful human connections, the positive experiences, and instead opt for the physical objects or the association with physical objects that provide social validation. Ergo, a revisit to the entire conversation on diamonds, on luxury bags, and on luxury sunglasses. Those industries exist not for you to form real meaningful relationships, despite the fact that you've been convinced that you need said mineral in order to maintain and or create a meaningful relationship with a person. No, it is literally just to keep up with the Joneses. It is for you to be able to tell your friends that you got your significant other, insert carat size here diamond, or for her to show off to her friends of, oh my God, look at my ring. And that's really all it is. there's no true meaning to it. It exists as a mean of social validation and social proof. Now, let's keep this going. We're adults in today's day and age. The economy, again, there's a lot of external noise about it, but to put simply, just looking at consumer confidence, like I talked about 2 weeks ago, isn't very high. If you are watching this podcast right now, odds are that you aren't extremely confident in the health of the economy. Odds are. We hit record low consumer confidence a few months ago, and we kind of continue to tread water, if not trend slightly downward. People aren't very confident right now. However, American savings rates are at their lowest since 2008. I repeat, since the financial crisis that the world kind of thought we might not recover from. And that's not just because of inflation. Sure, inflation plays a significant role in this entire debacle. But that is not really the big reason why savings rates are plummeting to all-time lows. See, back in May, when it was first announced that savings rates had plummeted to decade or so lows, they then went out and surveyed the different age groups about spending habits. And what they found is that young Americans, Gen Zs and millennials, were still more likely than their older counterparts, the Gen Xs and the boomers, to travel during the summer, to continue spending. Essentially, all the young people were like, you know what, nah, screw this. We're not doing a recession. We were just locked in our houses for 3 years. Absolutely not. We're taking a break. Screw it. We are doing the thing we want to do. Again, reasonably speaking, given that depending on parts of the country, you were more locked down than others, speaking someone who came from Los Angeles last summer. Yeah, that first year of COVID was not fun. So I get it. But that's kind of why back in, I think it was March or April, I even wrote an article discussing revenge travel, for people to spite themselves, even with the increasing cost of inflation, even with the cost of goods going up, back then still gas continuing to go up in price. People said, screw it. No, we are traveling because we want to travel. Expenses and repercussions be damned. That also got played on by the fact that you had influencers, celebrities, whatever it was, now getting on social media and discussing where they were going, where they were traveling to. What parts of the world or what parts of the country they were exploring next. And you turned on your phone, you logged into whatever app you prefer. If you're a Gen Z, probably TikTok. If you're a millennial, probably Instagram. And you saw people, probably not your friends due to the algorithms that both these apps function on at this point, probably some random person you've never met, traveling somewhere that you've never been, throwing around money that you have never had. It's a rather vicious cycle that we exist in, but that's basically what's been happening, where people are so tired, they're exhausted, for lack of a better word, with simultaneously being stuck in their houses, but also of everything being negative, where it's like, you know what, no, we want the objects, the experiences, we want all of it, we want to be able to do things. A, because we've been trapped for a bit, but B, because look at all the other people who are doing it. I mean, come on, if they get to do it, I want to do it. Again, looking at the world in that lens isn't exactly the healthiest, especially when we look at data relating to consumer credit card debt, and we understand that we are nearly at record levels. See, consumer credit card debt between the second quarter of 2021, so let's just say roughly June of 2021, to the end of this June, over a year, credit card balances increased by $100 billion. Or in other words, a 13% increase, which was the largest year-over-year increase in 20 years. I know that every other day it seems like a new company is coming out with a buy now, pay later type of plan. These don't help you. Because if you're one of those people who's putting everything on card, or at this point, buy now, pay later, and then you have all of your other expenses, and you're one of the people who doesn't pay their full account balance when it's due, those interest rates, oh boy, are they going to hit you hard. Carrying debt, that is a very good way to stay broke. That's not a good way to do it. And it's astonishing because we are already at the point, as of again a month or so ago, where we are $40 billion below the record that was set in the fourth quarter of 2019. In other words, just before the pandemic, when again money was lax and loose and you could just get a loan for free and everyone was getting whatever they wanted for free when we just printed money because why not? We're already $40 billion away from that as of the most recent data. That's less than 5% away. So if we keep growing our credit card debts the way that we have been, we'll be there in a few months. We will have a new record high for credit card debt as a country, as a people, very soon. And again, that's not a good thing because most people struggle with debt. That's why the news of Biden canceling student loan debt for a subset of people a few days ago, a week ago, was such big news. Because especially when the economy feels like it's going bad, you want as little debt as possible. And as I had mentioned a week or two back when I was discussing what it actually means when the Fed raises interest rates, as the Fed continues to do that, those interest rates that you are charged for loans, for credit cards, also goes up. So as the Fed continues to raise rates and you carry more debt, you pay more, meaning you lose more, meaning your savings rates continue to go down. And we have already hit records for consumer debt. For the first time ever, consumer debt is over $16 trillion. I will repeat, U.S. household debt, as of a few weeks ago, August 2nd, 2022, was $16 trillion. I don't even know if I can fathom how much that is. I really don't. Like, that is a lot of money. And most people don't have that money. But again, we're caught in this vicious cycle of what is expected from us. What should we be buying? What should we be doing? Should we be traveling? Should we be buying a home? Should we be buying those luxury bags or luxury shades that I discussed last time? I don't know. Again, inflation is hitting people where it hurts. I discussed this in the first interview that I did with Dr. Joe Fitter, where I talked about how most people now, because of inflation, are cutting out medical expenses. Going to the doctors, getting things checked, putting off surgeries. We're putting off things pertaining to our health. And that's not a good thing, because I think that was a news story that broke earlier today where the average life expectancy has continued to dip from 2019, where the life expectancy was 79. Now the average life expectancy is 76. Now, there are some conversations about precisely what that means. Some people are saying that it's not really a decline for the average person, but just that some people, those who are more medically at risk, are living significantly shorter than others, whereas the average person really hasn't seen much of a decline. Some are commenting on what this means for the American healthcare system. But really, even if kind of we assume that it's the high 70s, let's just assume average life expectancy is 78, 79, like it was a few years ago. You know what that means? That middle age doesn't mean 50. Doesn't even mean 45. Probably doesn't even mean 40. For the average person, if you are 38, so all of those older millennials that are listening right now, you're middle-aged. I just want to take a second to have that sink in. Because we expect, for some weird reason, that you're middle-aged when you hit 50. Why? The odds of people living to 100 are not high. Again, the average is you don't even hit 80, which means there are people who don't even hit 70, and that means there are people who live into their 80s. That's generally how distributions of data sets work. But for us as a people to assume that we can just keep spending, keep buying things, because, hey, we have plenty of life left to live, why not? No, probably not. If you're one of those people who's planning on working until you're 65, 66, then retiring, you'll be retired for on average 10 years before you die. That's a rather somber thought, said out loud, that the current state of the economic system is you work, assuming that you work immediately out of college at the age of 22, for 43 to 45 years, retire, and try to spend 10 years doing things that you might enjoy at a much worse physical state before you die. That's terrifying. But again, that's also why I'm here to discuss financial health so that we can hopefully avoid all of these issues. And you even see it outside of general spending habits, also in the markets today. Now, the markets have been on a losing streak the last few days. I am not surprised by this. I've been very open about it. I have very pessimistic projections for where stock markets go from here. I don't have high hopes. But people continue to talk about continuing to invest, buying the dip, all of the other fun things. There is a legendary quote by the economist Maynard Keynes, where he says quite succinctly, markets can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. Or in other words, the markets cannot make sense, continue to fluctuate, keep giving you signals of buying the dip, far longer than you can actually afford to keep buying said dip. Hello savings rates of 4% for the average American. And credit card debt that is near all-time highs, and overall household debt that is at record highs. It's not going well for you. Odds are. But now the question, I've run around this a couple of times, is why? I assume that you, the listener, are a reasonably intelligent person. Yeah, that is my assumption. So it doesn't really make sense in the abstract that we would do things that are such a negative influence on us, knowing, more often than not, they can be as negative as they are on us. So the question therein rests in why. And to that, I go back to the basic concept of social engineering. There was a book that was published earlier this year by Johann Hari called Stolen Focus. Now, I've read a good portion of Johann's books, followed his work for a bit, and he really, with this one, went deep into the concept of how the brain works the way that it does by really addressing how social media companies and tech companies manipulate your habits. Now, let me get into this. See, you have all of these major companies. Let's just start with the biggest two. Google and I want to call them Facebook, but officially they're now called Meta. These are the two biggest companies as pertains to ads. Now, Google, outside of the general Google workspace, also owns YouTube. It has for a number of years. Facebook, as we all know, outside of Meta, outside of owning Facebook, also owns Instagram as well as WhatsApp. So these two behemoths, their main product is data. It's not really what they're selling you. See, I remember, and I'm going to cite actually a lecture that I gave in the 2021 fall offering of e-commerce last year at Boston University, where I actually gave a lecture on the manipulative advertising of Google and Facebook. See, and I cited the rather oft-repeated quote that is used in these circles, where if you are not paying for the product, i.e., Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you are the product. Now, what do I mean by that? See, how many people actually know how Google makes money? Real talk. Now, this is a company that has a market capitalization of at one point of over $2 trillion. It's one of the most expensive companies in the world, one of the most valuable companies in the world. How does it make its money? The correct answer here is ads. See, in 2020, Alphabet, Google's official parent company, generated $183 billion in revenue. Of that 183, 147 billion, over 80%, came from Google's ads. Not from actual products, subscriptions, whatever it is. Literally from ads. Now ask yourself a question. What are ads? Or specifically, what are targeted ads? Now, the correct answer here is that ads are a use of your data, your personal life experiences, really, boiled down to a piece of code that are then thrown back at you in order to get you to buy a certain thing, enlist in a certain class, in order to get you subscribed to something. That's what ads are. Ads are a mechanism in order to get you to consume something. And again, we go back to how does Google collect these, bits of data that is required to make targeted ads. And this is what a lot of people forget. See, outside of general Google searches, which makes up a significant portion of their ad revenue, there's also so much data that they gain from all of their other properties. See, what a lot of people don't recognize is that, let's say that you own a phone that has Google built in. Google Maps, whatever it is, you link your Google account with it. By default, your phone sends your location and shares it with Google. So if you just casually, having your phone on you, go to Marshall's, and then Sephora, and then Starbucks, kind of on a casual Saturday, and then go home, even if you haven't explicitly searched for anything, you've told Google all of it. That's why, actually, generally speaking, you have to manually go in, change those settings, put in your own phone settings, not even in an app, in your own phone settings, put in do not track. Because by default, your phone will track you. It will then send that data of where you visited, because everyone knows how Google Maps, Apple Maps, Waze work, is if they know in general where your phone is, and they know, hey, there's a business here, that means they know where you are. And if they now know that you like to shop at Marshall's and that you spend 83 minutes and 29 seconds there, well, now they can make some assumptions. You just told them quite a bit without telling them anything. So then they take your data and sell it to whomever, perhaps to Marshall's, perhaps to the clothing brands that Marshall sells. And now you get ads for it when you open up YouTube, when you open up Google Maps, when you open up Gmail, when you open up the Google Play Store, when you open up the Google search engine in general. You are the product. And this goes back to why you buy things. It's not that they accidentally found out what you liked or what you were in the mood for. It's that you told them without telling them. Now, let's talk about Meta or Facebook. Let's just talk about the social media platform Facebook. I'll ignore the parent company for a second because I still don't like the name change. See, this was a big crux of my lecture last year, where Facebook, you may not know this, but even if you're not logged in to Facebook actively, but you have been logged in or you have a profile with them and you log into other online sites, you scroll there, you do some window shopping there, or you do some actual shopping there, all of that data is then sent from that platform back to Facebook and stored on your profile, and then ads are created for you. Now, hold up. What did I just say? So let's say that you, John Doe, are buying a pair of shoes. Simple example. The online store that you are purchasing those shoes from then saves that little profile that you have. Again, the cookies. Whenever you log into a site, it says, our site uses cookies, whatever that are. Cookies are essentially breadcrumbs. They provide personal details about what type of device you're using, where you are in the world, and then what sites, what pages you visit, what you're looking at, and it saves all of that. So then it can package all of that little fun data set and send it off to Facebook. So then you, John Doe, log into Facebook, and suddenly, casually, you're seeing a 10% off coupon for those exact pairs of shoes, or for that online site. A lot of you are getting a little confused, because if you remember what I originally said, you don't have to be logged into Facebook for this to happen. You don't even need to have your account linked to your Facebook account. No. If you have a Facebook, or if you've ever even used Facebook on the same device, literally anything, that data goes back to Facebook. And again, that's how Facebook makes money. Facebook in of itself, come on, guys, Facebook's not really making money off of those old headsets they were making. No, absolutely not. Facebook was always making money based off of selling your information or gathering it and then using it in order to create targeted ads for you. So actually, do me a favor. I'm going to give you a step-by-step walkthrough here, and I want you to pause this video, audio, whatever it is that you're listening to me on, and do this for me. See, Facebook, finally, after years of people like me kvetching about the privacy concerns, now has an off Facebook activity tool where you can actually go and find all of your stuff. See, go to the little drop down, and I'm going to do this for desktop. Mobile is a little more complicated. Go to the little drop down in the top right of your desktop version of Facebook, select settings, then your Facebook information. And there, you'll find an option that says off Facebook activities. And then at that page, you'll find a list of all the sites that are sharing information with Facebook. Legitimately. So right now, pause, play this back, try it. I guarantee you that you're going to find sites that you never, ever thought were going to be linked to your Facebook. This can be things like YouTube. Let's leave YouTube out of it. Stores that you shop at, news things that you shop at, Hulu, Netflix, basic news sites, your email, literally every website or app, because it works for apps too, that you logged into. Take a look and see how many of them are sharing your information with Facebook. I guarantee you're not going to like it. Because this is how, in 2 steps, A, they get you hooked on a product. If they know that you already like the product or you're interested in it, bombarding you with targeted ads for that product, for that site, are going to make things brilliant. But 2, it also again creates that pressure of, oh my God, I was just shopping at this site. I didn't buy anything, but now I'm getting a coupon. I need to buy it now. It's brilliant social engineering. By continuing to show you things that you don't really need, probably, especially if you saw it on a social media site like Facebook, probably don't need it, probably don't want it. But because someone else that you probably don't like bought something that you don't need, with money they don't have to impress people they don't like, now you need it too. That's just, people are weird, man. That's just what we do. But see, now the question goes back to, again, we are smart people, reasonably speaking. Why do we do this? It doesn't really make any sense. Again, if I'm trying to be financially literate, I want to be aware of my spending habits, my saving habits, my expenses, everything. If I want to be aware of it, why would I fall for this? Like, why would I do this? And the most basic answer here is because you've been programmed to. Again, I've called it social engineering, but that's quite literally what it is. Now, back to Johann Hari's book. See, in it, a significant portion of that book deals with a man named Tristan Harris, who is a technology ethicist, used to work at Google, now has a nonprofit called the Center for Humane Technology. He was the feature in Netflix documentary called The Social Dilemma. And he provided a significant amount of the testimony that was given for Johann Hari's book. And he just discusses precisely what happens. And here's an analogy that he gives. You know how most of these social media apps have a pull to refresh? You drag from the top of the page, then release it, and it shows you the newest thing. It functions like a slot machine. It's much the same motion, and it has the exact same addictive qualities. You keep pulling down in order to get something new. And you get, each time, a hit of dopamine as it happens. I talked about how in the last session that purchasing things are hedonistic actions. Buying something sends a release of dopamine into the body. It makes you feel good to buy things. Even if you don't need it, it chemically sends off that response back to you. Social media has much the same effect. When you scroll, you get a refresh. It's a stimulant. It affects your nervous system in such a way that you get hooked on it the same way that you would on drugs. And that's why you get stuck infinitely, as now being called, death scrolling, where you just keep refreshing, keep pulling to refresh, keep pulling to refresh, keep pulling to refresh. Even if there's nothing interesting or positive on, you're going to keep doing it. And I'm going to get back to the whole positive thing later. See, you are now hooked, largely speaking, on these types of things, where now the average teenager, 50% of them, would prefer a broken bone to a broken phone. I'll repeat that. The average teenager would prefer breaking a bone in their body, enduring physical pain and potentially some incapacity for a period of time, over breaking their phone, an object meant to communicate with people, but in today's day and age, more traditionally used as a sign of social status or as a medium for keeping up with the Joneses. Because suddenly if you break your phone, you can't keep up with people. You'll be out of the loop. You'll be socially ostracized. So we'd rather take pain, and again, potential incapacitation, versus socially losing out. That's horrifying. But again, it gets significantly worse. See, social media exists in such a way to be predatory. And you know this. I mean, this is very simple. See, algorithms, we give them a little bit too much credit for what we see. Algorithms aren't really designed to determine if something is good, bad, fake, real, whatever it is. Algorithms are meant to determine what will get you to keep scrolling. So, imagine, if you will, that you're on Facebook, because that's where most people still go to, well, and Twitter at this point. And you have two separate feeds. Both are showing you news, commentary, events, but one is positive, makes you feel happy, content. The other is negative, makes you feel sad, angry. I don't even need to ask you. You already know which feed you'd spend more time in. You'd spend more time in the negative one. Because subconsciously, there is something appealing, almost in a masochistic sense, about negativity, that we are so attracted to that we need it. And this is, very simple. We know this. This was a study done by NYU where tweets that included phrases of moral outrage attack, bad, blame, we're 20% on average more likely to be retweeted and liked for every single one of those words used. So if you use 3, 4, 5, your rate just keeps going up. The same thing with YouTube. If a video has hates, obliterates, slams, destroys in it, those will be the best performing. It happens. We are conditioned to work in that way. So I might actually have to try that moving forward. Maybe just in this entire critique on social media, title of video, Gabriel Chabot destroys Facebook, something like that, see if it works. But that's what we get sucked into. We get sucked into a spiral of negativity, even though, again, it makes us feel negative. It makes us feel worse about ourselves. There's a lack of guardrails. The more that we see things that make us feel bad, the more time we spend on it. So we go back to these social media influencers, people on TikTok, on Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is. They're living the life that you want to live, spending money that you don't have on things you don't need to impress people you don't like. But you recall that you desire more than anything social validation. That's the whole point here. You want to fit in. You want to be part of the crowd. You want to have friends. You want to be desired in a relationship, again, business or romantic. You now seeing something that makes you feel bad, that makes you feel like you aren't enough. You pay attention to these videos more. So if someone is selling you, again, for women, let's say a fit to a workout class, whatever it is. And for men, hello, my entire second episode, a course or a series of courses on how to get rich. Even though they make you feel worse, that you aren't attractive enough, that you aren't wealthy enough, for some weird reason, because it makes you feel worse about yourself, the more likely you are to look at it. And then the more likely you are to purchase it. Because you have been convinced that without that thing, you are not desirable. And you would prefer, literally, back to that first set of examples that I gave about the experience we did with children, you would prefer a less meaningful connection to someone if that person had an object that you desired versus a meaningful connection to someone that did not. And I'm sure that you can apply this to your dating life. I'm sure there's some listening to me and going, yeah, no, that's why I generally in the top list the 3 questions you're asked on a date. One of them is, how much do you make or what do you do for work? Every man in America just went, yeah, no, that sounds familiar. We are gauging your value based on your monetary value, or I guess your ability to create monetary value. It's just one of those things. We keep getting hooked on mediums, on objects that then sell us courses, objects, dreams that make us feel worse about ourselves with the implied notion that if we buy into these things, we will be accepted more socially, we will become better. Again, more attractive, more financially attractive, whatever it is. That without those set of things, we don't fit. We're not valuable enough. We don't deserve insert thing here. Or back to that comment by a doctor at Duke discussing the social habits of people. If you look like a loser going into a romantic relationship, odds of success aren't very high. So we have conditioned people that need to look a certain way, buy high-priced clothing, high-priced shades, shoes, whatever it is. Because people that you're going out with have also been convinced that you need to have insert thing here, and that if someone else is of value, then they also need to have that thing. We've been convinced, and again, this goes back to basic human psychology, it seems like, where children prefer toys to experiences. We have linked, now to the point where it seems like they're almost interchangeable, your physical value or your ability to create physical value with your actual personal value. And that's why you're going to continue spending time on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it is. So you're going to continue death scrolling on YouTube. So you're going to keep buying things you don't need, putting things on a credit card that you can't afford, and with interest rates continuing to go up, will not be able to afford for a period of time. You're going to keep doing it because you've been programmed to. And again, we see how easily these negative functions work, where out of the millions, if not billions, of hours that are spent on YouTube on a daily basis, 70% or so of those videos were not videos that someone searched up. Those are videos that popped up through YouTube's recommended algorithm. So let's say that high school's back in session, you're doing a report on the Holocaust. So you watch an old documentary on the Holocaust, and suddenly things get more extreme to the point where suddenly you're 2 videos into Holocaust deniers. It's not your fault. It's legitimately not, but YouTube knows that, again, the more extreme, the more outrageous, the more abhorrent the content, the more time you'll spend watching it. The more time you'll spend consuming, and ergo, how much money YouTube makes. YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all of them make more money the more time you spend on them. Or I guess in their platforms. So obviously they're going to keep feeding you negativity. Because the more time you spend there, the more data they can get from you, the more then they can sell to advertisers, and the more advertisers can populate your feed with ads for things that you may or may not need, which then continues that cycle of you purchasing those things that you may or may not need because you just spent time on an app with people showing you that thing that you apparently need to fit in. You are seeing how this is a cycle, right? It's beyond damaging. And that's inherently the issue. If you want to be better with money, just taking a step back and addressing the issue like it only has to do with your spending habits is nonsense. See, so as much as I respect the effort or the intention in attempting to address finance, again, saving, budgeting, or investing in spending, simply from the perspective of what is logically best for you, I think it misses the point. Because most spending decisions are not logical. Again, if we go back to that video I made on Monday, people in the lowest socioeconomic class spend 40% of their income on luxury goods. There's no logical reason for that. If you are broke, your main effort should be on surviving or improving your economic status by saving more money, investing in yourself and getting an education, whatever it is. It should not be in buying an item. Yet, again, we go back to that damaging cycle where if we tell people, especially those in low socioeconomic circles, that they're not good enough because they're broke, again, hop on social media, especially the dating-related channels, and see how many people are swearing off broke, insert follow-up letter, starts with a B. You are not attractive if you are broke, if you lack monetary funds. So, as I said in the previous episode, people who are rich generally don't bother wasting as much on luxury goods because they know they are secure in the knowledge that they do in fact have money and wealth. Whereas people who are in the lower socioeconomic classes have neither. They neither have that security and knowledge that they are wealthy, nor have the items generally to support the projection that they are wealthy. So, in order to address one side of that equation, because they can't address the first one immediately, it's a long-term process, they try to subsidize their own happiness by buying things that, again, they can't afford to impress people that they don't like, in hopes of getting them to like them. We have commodified relationships. So, that's also the damaging effect of making investing and financial literacy a major focal point of social media today. Because now if you hop on Twitter or if you hop on StockTwits, a platform literally made for people to discuss where they think stock prices are going, you start getting into herd mentality. Where suddenly everyone's talking about buying insert stock here. And now you feel bad because this famous person is buying something and now your friends are buying something. You don't want to be left out. You want to invest too. You want that social validation of, hey, yeah, I'm also invested in AMC. That's a fun example now that they're basically going bankrupt. I know, Bed Bath & Beyond, basically going bankrupt. You keep chasing social proof, it's going to keep blowing up in your face. So the best way, and the reason why I'm spending essentially 3 episodes now discussing behavioral finance, social psychology, and social engineering, is because so much of spending, of investing, of finance has nothing to do with finance, has nothing to do with economics, has nothing to do with what you're taught in schools, if you ever get taught in schools, basic finance, nothing to do with any of it. Most financial decisions today relate more to psychology, or better said, sociology, than they do economics or business. That's just a fact. So if you want to be smart about your spending, your investing, your saving, you need to address these social mechanisms at play first. So because a lot of these websites don't have guardrails in place, again, why would they? Doesn't do them any good to create guardrails in their own platforms that make them hundreds of billions of dollars. Hello, Google. Why? They're not going to create guardrails. That's not going to happen. Now, it comes back to you. You need to be conscious of it. And again, it's much easier said than done. I know, going back to that statistic, most people would rather break a bone and then lose their phone. If you're someone who has been conditioned over the past 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, God, if you're a millennial who's been on Facebook since 2004, the concept now of just deleting it or taking sabbaticals from social media almost seems terrifying. I mean, you're so used to that noise going off, to checking your phone to see if you have a new notification. It's almost ingrained in you. Yeah, at the same rate that you know that in the morning when you wake up, you're going to have to brush your teeth, probably the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is check your phone. We have become programmed to do that. Where now, odds are, if you're married, in a relationship, you live with a person, you probably check your phone before you say anything to them. And that's horrifying, but again, that's just how things work. So there was another conference that was given by people in the space where an ex-Googler asked a room full of engineers if they would want to live in the world they were creating. Shockingly to no one raised their hands. Because again, we are creating a world that is more negative, that is more distrustful, that is angrier, that is more driven on commodification of relationships, on objects, on making you feel that you are not enough. It's not a world that anyone wants to live in. Yet, that's what these platforms do. It's what they're meant to do. Again, back to my comment from day trading and how the system isn't broken when day traders lose money. It just wasn't built for you. It's the same thing that's happening in social media. It's not that the system is broken, that we're seeing these negative impacts on life, on culture as a whole, on society as a whole, on mental health and individuals. No, the system is functioning exactly as it was created to. And it was created to make money for major conglomerates, major corporations, to sell you out. You are the product. I guess in a dark humor sense of the word. If you ever feel worthless, just remember how much value you bring to Google and Facebook on a day-to-day basis. You are priceless. You need to be conscious of everything that is impacting you. So actually, here's a rule of thumb. If you see something online that you are inclined to purchase, whether that's a small purchase, small is a subjective word, but let's say a small purchase like a perfume, or a large purchase like a vacation, take 2 days and think about it. Now, why? See, is because in general, our decision-making in a short period of time is more emotionally driven than it is logically driven. So if we create a gap that allows the logical brain to catch up with the emotional one, if after 2 days you still want that thing, after you have not been thinking about it for a bit, you've had time to talk to people, whatever, and you still want it, fine. Still check to see if it makes sense in your budget, but whatever. But odds are, if it was just an impulse purchase, something that you saw on your death scroll through TikTok or Instagram, odds are you're not going to want it anymore. Again, that's why, going back to my second episode about why these old gurus in their seminars would give you a time limit. It's a limited time only offer of 10 minutes for you to sign up, make a decision. It's because you're not thinking logically in those 10 minutes. You're thinking emotionally. In those 10 minutes, it's your emotional brain firing on all cylinders. So moving forward, whenever you make a purchase, especially if it's something that just popped up, put your phone down, maybe write it down, and then don't think about it for 2 days. And then come back to it and say, do I still want this thing? Odds are the answer is no. Outside of that, be very aware of how much time you spend on social media. Put guardrails in place. Whatever that means for you, turning notifications off, going into your phone settings and limiting how much time you can spend in an app, whatever it is. I guarantee you will feel better the less time you spend on it. And you'll probably spend significantly less money too. And that is basically all that I have for today. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Again, it's something that I kind of wanted to build off of after Monday's session. I felt there was still quite a bit that I could discuss. If you found it interesting, again, follow the channel, subscribe to it, share it with your friends, leave a review, leave a rating. That'll help us get out to as many people as possible. I really do appreciate everyone who has tuned in to this point. It means the world to me, and I hope that we continue growing together, and I hope that I can help you wise up. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you on Friday.